Today we're gonna celebrate the tomato, and I thought one of the best ways to feature the tomato would be to make a nice soup. And we're gonna show you guys how to make one that doesn't require cooking, is luxurious, it's smooth, it's like, once you try this, you'll never have a soup any other way when you use tomatoes. The other cool thing about this soup is I'm calling this an inter-island tomato soup because I'm using tomatoes from some of the different islands that we have here in Hawaii. Right here I've got some heirloom tomatoes that we're going to use from Hamakua Springs. Our friend Richard Ha grew these for us. And like one of the cool varieties that we're going to be using is a brandy wine here. I've got some grape tomatoes here that we're using from our friends over toward the North Shore, Whole Farms. And then we have some fun tomatoes here that are coming from the Ewa side of Oahu. So we'll use 3 different tomatoes from 3 different farms, and we're just going to go for it and see how awesome we can make this soup. Now, lots of times when people make tomato soup, they start with canned tomatoes, and those actually are good tomatoes to use because they're picked at peak flavor. But you know, I want to use something that's fresh. The other thing that's cool about this soup is because we're using fresh tomatoes and because we're not cooking it on the stove, it's going to have a nicer, I think it's going to have a nice, a fresher flavor, as opposed to sometimes the flavor can be a little muted when you cook it on the stove. So we got a blender here, and I threw our tomatoes. I quartered the big ones. I'm throwing the small ones in whole. And you notice the thing is I'm using the seeds and all. And what that's going to help us do is it's going to help us make sure that all of the flavor that's in this tomato goes into the soup. I'm using the skin. The only thing that we're taking out is the stem. Okay? So let me finish cutting this up. Throw that in here. And if you wanted to, you could also experiment with putting different colors of tomatoes in. The problem with that is it gets a really gray color. What I would do if I wanted to do a soup that had maybe 3 different kinds of colored tomatoes, I would do each of them separately, and then you could do a soup sampling and each one would have a different color. So that's super fun. But because this brandy wine here is pretty close to red, I'm going to go ahead and use it. Now you may be asking yourself, why use heirloom tomatoes, first of all, and then why use all these different tomatoes? Typically, you're going to find if you're using an heirloom tomato, you're going to get a nicer depth of flavor. And part of the whole thing about keeping legacy or heirloom varieties is because over time, you know, through breeding and through different kinds of hybrids, some of the flavors of tomatoes have been lost. And this is one of the ways that they've been able to save that and really get, you know, capture the flavors of tomatoes as they used to be. The other thing is when you're using different varieties of tomatoes, now you're adding the complexity to the soup. Imagine if you were going to make an apple pie and you just did Granny Smith, but what if you did a Granny Smith, a Washington State, or a Golden Delicious blend? Fuji apples added that. You have all of the different nuances of those different apples adding to a whole. And in the same way, this soup's going to have the combination of 4 different tomatoes in there, plus the different regions that the tomatoes are grown is going to add even more complexity to the soup because of different soil types, the different, you know, farming techniques, etc. So now I've got some chopped garlic that's going to go inside, and now I have salt. We're going to put some in there. Again, when you're cooking, you want to season as you go. So we're starting with some salt. I got some pepper that I fresh ground. We're going to throw that in here. And now I'm going to just pulse this. I want to start to break it down. So I have my blender on, and I'm just going to pulse it. It's starting to break down, right? Okay, now I'm going to turn this on to high, and I'm going to just let it rip. Everything is now incorporated, it's pureed nicely, and the next step here is I'm going to start to incorporate oil into the soup that's going to give it a luxurious, sort of a velvety quality, and it's going to make it smoother. So what I do here is we're going to emulsify that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on at low speed and gradually pour oil into this as it emulsifies into the soup. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna continue to mix this soup on high speed to get the skins to puree up, to get the color out into the soup, and also I wanna get the seeds to completely break down into the mix here. So I'm gonna turn this on, I'm gonna go full blast, and I'm just gonna let it go. What's gonna happen is as it's breaking down, the blade's creating friction, and the friction that's created in here is gonna create heat. And so it's gonna par cook the soup so that we get a little bit of that cooking flavor, but at the same time, not so far that it's completely boiling and simmering and really just kind of muting the flavors. Okay, so we've been pureeing this for a few minutes now, and when I feel the base, you can feel some of that warmth, and so I know that it's starting to warm that soup throughout. And what I'm gonna do is take a look at it real quick and just taste it for seasoning. It's looking really good right now. Wow, it's really fresh. It's got really good acidity. I need a little bit more salt in here. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that the oil that I'm starting with is canola oil. And I'm gonna add extra virgin olive oil to finish the soup, but you don't want to just use extra virgin throughout the process, because what'll happen is if you put this extra virgin can be very, very strong and very, very pronounced. And if you put too much, it can get bitter and overpower the soup. So now I'm gonna just put a little bit of the extra virgin in to incorporate it and give it some of that flavor, but I'm using it as a finishing ingredient. Okay, so now the soup is done. You could take this and serve it right away, or you can put it in the refrigerator. The nice thing about this soup also is that it doesn't have, because it's not cooked, you can serve it chilled, which is awesome, or you can serve it, you can go ahead and heat it and serve it. Now, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just make a couple sort of appetizer or quick tasting portions. I have some nice glasses here, and I'm gonna take my soup here and I'm just gonna pour a little bit into the glass. And you can see the color is really coming out nicely here because of that friction and the heat. It's got all the pigments coming out of the skin. And we've got some air in here, which is nice. So the soup is nice and airy. It's smooth. It's luxurious because of the oil that we've put in there. And now it has a really bright flavor, really good acidity. All of the different flavors from the different tomatoes are really coming into this. And now I have some basil oil that we've made. I'm gonna just drizzle a little bit of basil oil on the top here, which looks beautiful. And then we have some crostinis, and I'm gonna serve it with crostinis, but you know it's really good too. You can make Kahlua pork sandwiches and serve it with the soup. Amazing. But here we go. This is a crostini, and we put some goat cheese on there. This is Big Island goat cheese. I have some fresh basil from our friends over at Nalo Farms. And we have some truffle oil that I was able to get, so I put that on there. And I'm gonna just put it on the glass just like this. And you know, these are perfect pass outs for a get together. It's just yummy, simple but elegant, and I think that's the fun part. So I'm gonna go and enjoy this, but remember, for more recipes like this, visit us at foodland.com. Cheers. Mm.